This is about the film I, Daniel Blake by Ken Loach and what it reveals about the welfare system and about the film goers who loved it because it made them angry. And the film is very careful with the truth. From the start, the doctors don't tell Daniel Blake that at the age of 59 he has the heart of a 110-year-old man and could drop dead any time. This is concealed so that his death at the job centre can be blamed on the job centre, where he died waiting for an appointment. Although that happens to a lot of people. My mother died the day before a doctor's appointment, but the doctor didn't murder her. Her time was up at 89, and it's the same with Daniel Blake, who has a terminal condition which kills him. And he gets the wrong advice. The doctors say don't work. They should say don't move. Go to intensive care. We'll try to find you a new heart. But then there'd be no film. So what we're shown is an ordinary working man who needs help. Although to me, Daniel Blake looks extraordinary. He looks extraordinarily unlucky. He's the only slim, fit, non-smoking teetotaler in Britain to have a bad heart. He's the only adult in Britain never to have bought anything online. He can't use the internet to claim benefits. He's the only scaffolder in the country never to have saved a penny during 4 decades of work. And he's the only man in the building trade without a single friend who can lend him some cash or offer him a job that won't exert him and jeopardise his health. He's also a miracle socially. He has no friends, no children, no relatives, no hobbies or interests, no wife. She died, possibly from overexcitement. So he's a hermit, but he's a miraculous hermit. He's a sociable hermit. He's a very outgoing recluse who makes a friend at the job centre, a young mum, a Londoner. And that's another miracle. Daniel Blake meets the only person from London stupid enough to invite a complete stranger back to her house to fix the door handles. But he's friendly to her, and that's important for Londoners, who this film is aimed at, because Londoners believe that Newcastle, which is 300 miles north of London, is a kinder and more honest place than London. And the Newcastle accent is used by advertisers in London to suggest decency and trustworthiness. And Daniel Blake isn't just nice to this woman, he starts working for her, unpaid, as a childminder, a maintenance man, a supplier of toys to her children. And he builds her a bookcase for free, using a handsaw, even though the doctor said don't work. So this is another miracle. He's the only carpenter in Britain who's never heard of power tools. And he works, effectively, all the time, despite the medical advice. But he works selectively. He works when he wants to show that he's kind, and he doesn't work when he wants to show that the system is unkind. The system refuses him sickness benefit, so he applies for unemployment benefit, and he's offered a job, which he turns down because the job would disqualify him from sickness benefit. So he's in a strange position. He works but refuses to earn money, deliberately. He does this to maximise his apparent need, and the system encourages this. It encourages people to speculate in their own poverty, to appear as poor as possible to get a larger settlement. So people will appear poor and stay poor because the poorest are helped first. And that's why Daniel Blake won't earn money, he won't borrow money, he hasn't saved money, and he hasn't paid his fuel bill either. He owes £394, which is months of unpaid energy. And it can't come from the time when he was in hospital, because in hospital he wouldn't use energy at home. So this bill is another miracle. How did it come to be unpaid? But the unpaid bill is very helpful to him as it increases his apparent need. But he has paid his phone bill because he relies on the phone to negotiate his settlement with the job centre. So he's very selective about which bills he pays and doesn't pay. And he's very angry about all this. And the audience will understand that anger because everyone in Britain is very angry about the welfare system. And he's angry, I think, because he's claiming on an insurance policy he didn't choose to buy. He was forced to buy it through taxation. He's also angry, I imagine, because he's in a time warp. When he was younger, in the 1980s, unemployment benefit took 5 minutes to claim. You signed a form at the job centre, you got your rent paid and an allowance, and you came back 2 weeks later and signed the form again. So there'd be builders in the queue in helmets and boots next to you who would take off their paint spattered gloves and sign the form and then go off to work in a van. You could hear chugging outside the job centre. But the system is now much tougher on fraudsters. It's more like a commercial insurance company, which minimises its payouts. And the part we see in the film where the money is paid out now looks very harsh. The part we don't see where money is paid in is equally harsh. People pay in through taxes which are extracted on pain of imprisonment. But we only see Daniel Blake's bit so that we can sympathise with Daniel Blake, and we forget that his benefits are funded by other people working. And these other people are also working to pay Daniel Blake's rent. he maximises his income by claiming rent support, housing benefit we call it, which is another miracle. He's the only builder in Britain who can't afford to rent a flat after 4 decades in the highly lucrative trades of plumbing, carpentry and scaffolding. But his rent support has been reduced. He mentions the bedroom tax. That means a cut in rent support for single men like him in a large flat, which encourages them to move into a smaller flat, releasing the larger flat for a family, which is fair, but he resents that too. He wants to hog his large flat paid for by other people because he despises the system. He's been taught to despise it, even when it succeeds. It succeeds in giving him a large flat. It gives him sickness benefit too at the end. He qualifies for it, but just before he dies. But nobody who watches the film will be satisfied by that. They will say, no, it's too little, too late. Even though he wasn't killed by the system, he was killed by nature. But this is an alarmist film, and it's a sentimental film, and it's aimed at London. It's aimed at middle-class filmgoers in London who like to view the working class as a quaint but admirable subspecies. Daniel Blake, good example, skilled, honest, hard-working, an artisan with a politely rebellious streak who stands up to the nasty staff at the job centre and defaces the building with spray paint, which is probably the tamest act of political insurrection ever committed to film. And he's punished disproportionately by being murdered. And this titillates the middle-class audience. The death of a harmless, unthreatening rebel inspires their synthetic outrage. And Ken Loach knows his audience because he's one of them, and the actors are too. And the film offers this prosperous audience a quick safari among the underclass, a chance to watch the underprivileged in their natural habitat, which makes prosperous people feel more comfortable about their prosperity. They can afford to pay actors to pretend to be working class, to pretend to be destitute, and to pretend to be working as prostitutes. And they can indulge their Marie Antoinette fetish about the poor, that they're noble, simple, and morally pure. Daniel Blake, the good, honest carpenter, the unemployed Jesus, executed by an evil system. And it's the same with the mother from London, who works in a brothel to raise cash, she says, to buy fresh fruit and vegetables for her children. So she's the only woman ever to sell her body for vitamin C. But the idea that kiwi fruit and avocados are so important that mothers should have sex with strangers to put them on the table is a fantasy aimed at people of my class. People like me would normally look down on a mother who's a prostitute, but if it's so the kids can have organic brunch, then it's fine. So when you hear people say that they're furious about I, Daniel Blake, what they mean is they're relieved. I think they're relieved. They're sort of saying, thank God I don't live on the dole in the north of England. If they were really furious, they'd do something about it. They'd help. They'd pay more taxes. They'd shelter the poor in their big houses, but they don't. They don't help. They get angry, which doesn't help anyone. It helps them, doesn't help the poor. And we know that they don't help the poor because if they did, they'd tell us about it all the time, I should think.